Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast on this Tuesday edition. I am Sterling Holmes Brisco, and we should have news rolling in live during this show as it is Cutdown Day. The fun, well, for 53 people begins. For the others, we wish them well. Brisco, I wish you well. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing, all things considered, pretty well. But this is obviously a very, very busy day. There is a lot going on. There are a lot of varying levels of news. There is something kind of eerie about just standing where we are now, like looking up at the guillotine, knowing that at some point the Chiefs are going to give us a long list of updates. But we've already seen several interesting things happen already today. Me and the illustrious, esteemed Jordan Foote have been keeping our nose to the grindstone over on Chiefs on SI, as I know the Arrowhead Addict crew has also been doing. So, look, to your very real point, this is a less serious day for us in the media than it is for any of these players who are on the bubble. But it is a very serious, very busy couple of days. And by the end of this show today, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea of at least the top sort of 50 guys we're going to expect to see playing for the Chiefs this year. So it's a good day in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Kelvin Beachum actually yesterday, Arizona Cardinals tackle, 7th-round draft pick. Now he's entering his 13th year in the NFL.
Wow.
And it's interesting for him how he's on his 4th team. He played for the Cardinals the past couple of years, but now the Cardinals have obviously gotten younger. They brought in 2 new younger tackles. He's actually at risk of not making the 53. And so for him, it was an interesting conversation of, 7th rounder originally, is he going to make a team 13 years ago? Right. And now 13 years, the veteran, just that mindset. So I'm rooting for Kelvin Beachum, by the way. He's a really nice guy, really cool dude. But again, I do feel for the guys that their dreams might be ending. Now, some of those guys will get to some guys who had an opportunity and maybe did not make the most of it, a la Kadarius Toney. We'll get into that in just a moment, as well as some moves that were made. Boston T. Marty, great to see you again in here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were the guy out at American Century out there in Tahoe. It was great meeting you. And I always love the name Boston T. Marty.
That's really good. I just saw Lucas in the chat wanting to shout out the Tampa Bay Lightning jersey that I'm wearing today. I just didn't know there was anyone in the world with a profile picture that was half Tampa Bay Lightning logo, half Kansas City Chiefs logo. I didn't know that existed, so shout out to Lucas.
Boston T. Marty says, Hinder shot, head scratcher, vote of confidence for Wiley with Irv out. So we'll talk about the move. Again, a conditional 2026 7th rounder brought in former Cowboys tight end. But before we do all of that, I'm kidding. There's no ad read. Thanks, Rich.
Oh, baby.
Just got. You know what? Let's get into it now, boys.
And today's episode is brought to you by @JB Brisco on Twitter X. You can follow @JB Brisco on Twitter/X, and you will be presented with some Chiefs news, some good takes, some bad takes, and also occasional maybe movie or music takes. That's @JB Brisco, bringing you this episode of Tuesdays with Sterling here on Arrowhead Addict. Shout out to Clint in the comments as well. Clint McKenzie, the biggest road dog of any Chiefs podcast enjoyer I have ever seen, heard, met, interacted with. Shout out to Clint. He's definitely making our top 53.
Yeah, he's on the top 53. I'm lucky we're here, quite frankly. I was a little nervous. All right, let's talk about Toney, because Juju Smith-Schuster brought in. This was a surprise. We can talk about that, I guess, because we haven't even – I've talked about that for 8 hours on radio over the past 2 days, but why not talk about it again now for everyone else? Juju Smith-Schuster, the same guy. Yes, that Juju is brought back to Kansas City, wins a ring, got paid $16 million guaranteed, and now he's back in Kansas City. And he talked about today at his press conference, what do you have stayed? He goes, I did what was best for my family. I did what I thought was best for me. Yeah, 16 mil guaranteed, and then you're still coming back to Kansas City. I think you did do what's best for you, Juju. That's a smart man. But Smith-Schuster is back, and that pushed out guys like Nico Remigio, Kadarius Toney, and I think most likely in a one-for-one sense, Justin Ross. We'll get to the negatives, the guys who are out in a moment, but the guys that are in, that's Juju. What was your take on this?
It makes total sense. I was still a little surprised because a lot of times those moves that make total sense on paper end up hitting a logistical snag somewhere. One side decides that the reuniting doesn't make as much sense as it did once upon a time. Obviously, there are drawbacks with Juju. There are concerns, the type of thing that had some people, when he got cut by New England, I floated it out immediately to say, hey, look, if you know Rashee Rice is getting suspended, this is a slam dunk. Even if you don't know, I'd rather have 2024 Juju Smith-Schuster with a cane running his routes if his knee's not working for him. I'd rather have him in that spot than Sky Moore right now. I'd rather have him anywhere on the field than to another name you mentioned, Justin Ross. I don't know. I guess we wouldn't have talked about it because the game wasn't that long ago. Holy bleep, this has been a heck of a week. But there was the play that I tweeted out yesterday that I saw it in real time, and I took note of it in real time, and then it all made sense when they signed Juju. Chris Oladokun's out there in the early second quarter. Brett Veach is in the booth for the Chiefs TV broadcast, and they're barely into the second quarter, and they break the huddle, and Mecole Hardman kind of has to stick his head back toward Oladokun again to hear the play call, and he goes out wide, and Justin Ross follows him. And Hardman starts trying to line him up, and then flipping to the other side. You can see Oladokun pointing over there. With a couple seconds left in the play clock, Andy Reid and his Waffle House menu come over and smack a little timeout right in front of the ref. He blows it dead, and they move on from there, right? That's a very specific preseason snap, but it is indicative of what I think is the easiest thing to say definitively about Juju Smith-Schuster. If physically capable, he will be where you need him to be. If physically capable, he will line up correctly, he will run the right route, he will feel the defense, he will potentially bring you an element of your offense that may not be universally available for you now. Now look, a lot of the things that Rashee Rice did last year were right there with what Juju did when he was wide receiver 1 in 2022. Rashee Rice right now is a better player than Juju right now. I think that's relatively obvious, and the hierarchy is relatively obvious. But it's still good to have... Sterling, this is the part I have not heard a second of what you've said on the radio. I don't think I've seen you tweet about it. So if we disagree, I am so interested to have this conversation. But the thing that baffles me is that people who watch the 2023 Kansas City Chiefs see a, yes, little bit older, a little bit slower, not as productive, injury prone, basically free, reliable veteran wide receiver on the open market. And they go, no, I would not bend over to pick that quarter up off the pavement. And that's silly to me. I think this makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Really quickly, shout out Slothy Style says, this episode of Tuesdays with Sterling is brought to you by me and other super chatters.
Fair enough.
Thank you for the donation. You're the man.
Thank
Slothy,
you,
I always appreciate you. Can't wait to kick your ass in fantasy football this year. We're in a 22-man league, Slothy, myself, and a whole bunch of the Discord members. It's going to be fun. It's interesting to say the least, but Slothy, dude, appreciate you. When it comes to Juju, my initial reaction was befuddlement. It wasn't negative. It wasn't positive. It was just, And part of it was the injuries. Part of it was, to me, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, and with the Kansas City Chiefs keeping 7, those are special teamers. Justin Ross last year played in 10 games. 10 games. Mm-hmm. He had 11 targets. So for me, I'm sitting here going, what's more valuable to the team? People have heard me talk about this conversation many times, so I'll be brief. But to me, are the 11 targets over 10 games more valuable than what someone can do on special teams, a la Nico Remigio? Well, the Chiefs obviously valued, 1, Sky Moore's looking really damn good on these returns. Not punt returns, kick returns. Sky Moore's looked really good. Him and Carson Steele have looked great, which in my opinion, it kind of made Nico Remigio redundant. That was bad news that Sky looked good because this made Nico go, all right, my one role is now taken by a guy who's most likely going to already be on the roster. Your thoughts on Sky, we can get to in a second, but he was making the roster almost regardless. This is what we've all heard basically from one Arrowhead drive. So when it comes to Juju, it's who do you trust more in a rotational role?
Correct.
Him or Justin Ross? The Chiefs trust Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't expect Juju to play a lot. I expect him to be the wide receiver 4 or 5. Now, earlier on with Hollywood Brown out, we'll see how that really adjusts. But I don't expect him to play more than 20 snaps a game, maybe 25. Maybe I'm being a little bit low on Juju. But 3rd and 3, hey, Juju, come on. You're in the game. 3rd and 5, there's a soft spot in the defense that needs to be taken advantage of. All right, Juju, you're in the game. But, like, it's 1st and 10. All right, Hollywood, Rice, and Xavier, you're on the field. All right, we need a deep ball. All right, Justin Watson, you're coming in. Like, Juju's going to have a very specific role on this team. They've talked about how him and Travis worked very well together. How, one, he's got great hands, and I think the Chiefs are doing almost what they did with the offensive line a couple years ago where it goes, I don't care if this is overkill. We ain't having the exact same thing happen that happened in the Super Bowl. We will get so deep. We're getting so damn deep. I don't care if Juju Smith-Schuster is now our wide receiver 5. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And how dynasty is this? This is what the Patriots used to do. Jamie Collins was the perfect example of this. All right, you won a Super Bowl here. Now you want to get paid? No, you get paid someone else. You let me know how that works out for you, and we'll have you back on the vet minimum. The Patriots used to do this all the time. Guys would leave. They'd get paid. They wouldn't do well in their new home. They'd come back to New England. They'd win another ring. They don't pay them, but they reap the rewards. And the Chiefs are seemingly doing that with Juju Smith-Schuster. The more I've thought about it, the more I've had time to flesh out what I wanted to say in regards to this, the more I think, again, as a specialist, Juju makes a lot of sense and way more so than Justin Ross.
And it just costs you almost literally nothing. The Chiefs will have him on whatever tiny bit of salary because the Patriots are still paying him that $7 million or whatever it is this year. I think your special teams point is a good one. I would mention McCole Hardman in that group too. I think he and Sky Moore are probably the ones covering most of that need for you at this point, and they are probably wide receiver 5 and 7 in terms of receivers you want to see on the field. And maybe the Chiefs would say 5, 6, still all of that. But with Juju, it not only costs you virtually nothing, like he's going to be very near the bottom of the roster in terms of vet minimum cap hit, right? He'll be over the top 51 because rookies get paid less. All of that's very in the weeds. But he's costing you virtually nothing financially. He costs you literally nothing in terms of no conditional 7th round pick needed to be had here, or again, that he didn't need to be claimed off waivers. Now you're inheriting all of that money. The opportunity cost is Justin Ross. To your point about special teams and that final receiver spot, you have your starters, you have your special teamers who can certainly play offense, you hope, and then you're going to have kind of the specialist, as you said, a guy who is just there to play wide receiver, but isn't one of your 4 best wide receivers. I'd rather have that guy be Juju Smith-Schuster in 2024 than Justin Ross, who they may get back on the practice squad. I don't know. He could get claimed. Obviously, they thought there was a risk of that last year too. He could get claimed, and he could go to a team with a thinner receiver group that wants to use his skill sets in a way that may be more fitting of his skill sets. I think that's totally possible. I'm not banking on him being back as strongly as I'm banking on Louis Rees-Zammit being back, right? I think that one's probably going to happen. But you're basically bringing back Juju at the cost of letting Ross hit waivers. At this point, going into year 3 of the Justin Ross experience, where you saw how pissed Andy Reid was calling a timeout in the 3rd preseason game in year 3, I just don't think they're afraid of whatever happens with Justin Ross now. And that I think you are with me on this. I think most Chiefs fans would be with me on this. If I were to tell you that either Juju Smith-Schuster or Justin Ross is going to play a real part-time role in helping this team three-peat, I would take Juju as the more likely guy to do that in a heartbeat. If that's because of injuries, if Rashee Rice does get, at this point, would feel kind of randomly suspended, there's at least a chance of that because the NFL does crazy things at times. There are a lot of worlds in which I could see Juju moving the chains on 4th and 3, and I'm not sure that Justin Ross was going to have any opportunity to do that this year.
And from all accounts, Jason had a couple sources, and it was along the lines of, I see actually Brian Gales, you're on the right track here. Said Pat liked Juju, so I think Pat told Nagy to plant the Juju seed into Veach. It was actually Matt Nagy who told, hey, Matt Nagy was a guy going after Juju Smith-Schuster, saying he wanted Juju Smith-Schuster back, which might say that, yes, Pat probably told Nagy that he wanted Juju back. But again,
I think everyone pretty unanimously gets it here, right? Like they went through all of the drama they did last season, and again, today is largely about them cutting a couple of guys with incredible talent who couldn't put it together, being Juju and being Ross and Kadarius Toney. This just feels like, and again, if this was them, I almost said, damn, I was thinking like, well, if this is them cutting a former first round pick instead of that has some more potential, that maybe then I wouldn't enjoy it as much. But no, like they obviously did cut Kadarius Toney for that, and if they needed to let Sky Moore go to make Juju happen this year, I would be willing to have that conversation too.
Yeah.
I might have been willing to have the Nico Remigio Sky Moore conversation, but we never needed to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, we didn't. And again, we can get into Sky very quickly here. I've talked about it a lot, whether we agree or disagree. It was almost, he was making the team. And not because it's a sunk cost, because the Chiefs have shown they use the sunk cost analysis, whether it's Breeland Speaks, whether it's Kadarius Toney. If you don't fit the roster, no matter what they traded for you, no matter where you were drafted, you're done. They think if you can make an impact, you're on this team. Right now, Sky Moore makes an impact as a returner. It's why Justin Ross and Sky were never in the same conversation, because Justin is not doing the same things on special teams that Sky Moore was doing. Remigio is the other conversation you could have. Maybe Phillip Brooks or maybe Montrell Washington, you could have the same conversation. But when it comes to Kadarius Toney, because I think he's somewhat got thrown into the conversation here, when did Kadarius Toney ever show up for the voluntary workouts? When everyone was getting passes thrown, all the receivers were showing up, Travis was there at times, and Mahomes was throwing the rock. And this is voluntary. Who was the guy missing?
I believe Toney did show up to Mahomes' thing in Texas, but he did not go to any team activities throughout none of the voluntary.
When it was involuntary, yeah, he finally showed up. Voluntary stuff, when you think you might get cut, nowhere to be found. You know who was there?
Confusing.
Sky Moore. And again, it's a small thing. I know it almost seems high school. It does almost seem high school. Well, you know what?
Justin Ross was there, and it didn't save him. I don't know that it would have saved Kadarius Toney, but he should have shown up, I would imagine.
But Justin Ross was on the team until they brought in Juju. Justin Ross.
I think that's a little chicken and egg, but point made.
My point is, Justin did the things correctly. He tried. It just didn't work out for a multitude of reasons. But he did what he was supposed to do in the situation. Kadarius Toney, I think, played himself out of a job. I think Kadarius Toney really played himself out of a job. Ross was trying to play himself into a gig. Toney did the opposite.
I think my asterisk there, I think, would be that Toney did that throughout the 2023 season as much as he did it this offseason, that his stock was falling and falling and falling. And again, he 100% should have shown up to voluntary team activities. That's still mind-boggling to me. It was mind-boggling to me at the time. The other thing that I do wonder about is if Sky Moore was an undrafted free agent and if Nico Remigio was a second-round pick, who do you think would have a roster spot today? Ooh. I'm sort of challenging the idea of the meritocracy here, because I do think it puts some weight on the scale, not single-handedly, but to some extent.
But the contract will it just based on control, right? Based on team control.
Sure, dead cap.
Part of it would. The one thing I would say is I thought Sky actually looked better than Remigio did, like in training camp and OTAs and stuff. I would say, yeah, Remigio was the guy. Dave Tobe loves him. It's going well. But when it came to actual preseason, again, that's a small glimpse. The Chiefs coaching staff has a much longer look. It's hard to say that Sky didn't look better than Remigio.
He had a disastrous first 3 weeks of training camp. And that to me, the one little thing where I am putting my thumb on the scale of the Sky Moore conversation is I think Kadarius Toney needed to have a good camp to get a spot again. I think Justin Ross needed to have a good camp, which he largely did, and then had a crummy preseason, and that's all connected. I think Sky Moore may have had the worst training camp of the Chiefs' top 8 receivers, and he is still on this team in part because, again, it's the pre-draft scouting process, and saying, no, we think there's something more to unlock here. I just don't know if he's any more likely to be that guy than Remigio would have been. But again, also, I think the Chiefs largely made up their mind on Sky Moore well before any of this.
Sure. I want to give a massive shout out to Clint McKenzie. Dude.
Is that a $50 super chat from Clint?
Very kind. Go Chiefs.
I don't think I have
this
a part of
podcast,
mine
Tuesdays with Sterling, brought to you by Clint McKenzie and Slothy Style. Thanks, guys. Wow,
I wish I had some sort of... Shockingly, I don't have an easily accessible noisemaker in... Yeah, I forgot you have that.
Yeah, I have that thing.
Tuesdays with Sterling, brought to you by Clint McKenzie and Slothy Style. Tuesdays with Sterling.
I feel like we need to send Clint another video of you and me drinking beer.
Deal.
Because that was the last time we did. That was at the MVS charity event.
Yeah.
That was when MVS was still on the team. It's been a while.
Wow, that has been a minute.
It's been a little bit.
Still no official announcements from the Chiefs, by the way. The rest of the league's like, hey, here's our moves. And the Chiefs like, we'll get it to you.
Some other surprising ones. Irv Smith. I thought Kelvin Joseph was a surprise. I thought Kelvin Joseph was a fairly large surprise. Echo Boydo, not as much. I really liked Echo Boydo last year. I love that.
Warn you, man. I told you it was going to happen.
No. I'm with you, but he worked his way. He worked his tail off from K-State to OTAs to training camp to preseason. Then he got in some games last year and looked good, and then it never clicked this year with him. Looks like Christian Roland Wallace is making the 53. Yeah. And what I'll say about that is if you listen to this podcast, Daniel Harms and myself, we talked about him specifically. So I feel like, hey, we got something right. Like, you know how they always have one random guy who you're like, that guy made the team? Harms and I were both like, Christian Roland Wallace, that's going to be the guy.
Matt Derrick usually gets that guy right like a week before cutdowns, and he did it again. It's ridiculous.
But do you get it? Yeah. So Matt Derrick, myself, and Daniel Harms, we're all on the Christian Roland Wallace train, and it happened today. Tysher was on, and I was talking with Tysher about it, and Tysher was like, oh, did that happen in one of your 68 predictions? I go, I had two. Okay, I had two, Tysh. Don't be giving me a hard time. I also made sure to call him Tysh to let him know that,
That's good.
Come on.
You're ready to go if you need to.
Ain't
you need
gonna
to throw
punk
hands
me.
of this man.
Yeah.
God, Tysher's a legend. I love it.
Tysher's awesome. He's great. But yeah, I was like, come on. I got something right here. But were you surprised by any of the way the cornerback room is shaking out?
A little bit. Again, back to Slothy Style in the chat saying, like, Kelvin Joseph after the Bears game was not as surprising. I think we had him in our last projection. I think Joseph was our final corner. A little bit of a bet on nobody really separating themselves from that group. I think that's one of the reasons that Roland Wallace was able to make his way through. Now that he has done like an entire sort of rotation from corner to safety, and we'll see how the Chiefs actually use him, because that could be kind of a third category of some hybrid stuff. Yeah. But I don't know that there's anything surprising about the cornerback room. I would say that I am whelmed by it at the moment. I really hope that somebody would be able to separate, and now Joshua Williams is injured, and Jalen Watson was playing deep into the third preseason game, coming back from his injury and not playing great, but again, that was to get him live reps. I'm not actually bent out of shape about how he performed there and kind of his first real action back. But then like Najee Johnson didn't really step away, and I can't remember. I think he may have a hammy at this point, or it's knee again. I can't remember. But kind of through and through behind Trent McDuffie, I've been pretty convinced that somebody would separate, and I don't think that anyone's really separated as an obvious number 2. I don't know if anyone's really separated as an obvious number 3. I didn't end up having one guy at the end of the depth chart who I was like, oh, well, as long as Kamal Haddon makes the team, and maybe he will now, but it's still like early enough that I still think that by the end of the year, there's probably going to be a couple of guys like, yeah, they got the Dave Merritt treatment, and now Joshua Williams is back in his usual state, and Najee Johnson took a big step. All right, panic was unearned, but it's a little bit less satisfying than you'd like it to be, right?
I'm trusting Dave Merritt.
For sure, but you don't know for which players yet, right? I also am trusting Dave Merritt, but I'm not sure which players that he is trusting yet.
Quite frankly, I'm trusting Williams and Watson, two guys that we've seen have success in the NFL in actual NFL games.
They're just neither one of them are healthy right now.
I get that, and that's the only concern is injury. And I guess also Chamari Connor's not actually looked great in the slot during the portion we've seen this season so far, but again, he looked fine last year. It's interesting. It's like we're completely forgetting about the actual NFL games these guys have played in and only looking at now. It would be weird for these guys to regress the way they have, but again, there is something interesting underlying going on when even Spags, they're not comfortable, it feels like. And these are coaches and coaching staffs that feel like they can turn anyone into guys.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more cause for panic than that I'm given. But I do want to talk about the Chiefs and Cowboys trade. Again, a conditional 7th rounder in 2026. So it's nothing. This
guy was going to be waived. The Chiefs thought he's not going to make it to 32 on the waiver wire. Here's a conditional promise of a wish.
And so that is Peyton Hendershot.
Yeah.
Tight end. Irv Smith obviously was waived. Irv Smith not making it.
Pedantic, but he was released because he is a vested veteran, so he would not need to clear waivers to land on the Chiefs practice squad. Super terminology thing.
So he could decide that, hey, I want to be on the Chiefs practice squad. Right. But again, if he gets a job in the NFL on an active 53, more than likely he'll say, yeah, let me take that instead of the practice squad check, the game check. A little different. But this was a surprise to me. I'm assuming this means he makes the 53. Yep. I don't think you would trade a 7th rounder conditional or not at this point. What do you take away from this? Because is he moving the needle more than Irv Smith? Is it just a different style of tight end, maybe more of a blocking tight end than Irv? I liked Irv Smith.
I think you're going to love the real answer here. I'll go ahead and get the exact stats that Sam McDowell of the Kansas City Star tweeted a little bit ago. Hendershot has played 400 special team snaps over the last 2 years in Dallas. I don't think it's an indictment on Jared Wiley. I don't think it's an indictment on Noah Gray. I don't even really think it's an indictment on Irv Smith as a tight end. I might still be able to make an argument that I'd rather have Irv Smith out there running routes than Peyton Hendershot. But that's not really what the move is for with that understanding. I think it's, hey, we're going to go ahead and give Dave Tobe a guy who is, listen, also just to be clear, I've watched 0 snaps of Peyton Hendershot that I have retained as being Peyton Hendershot snaps, so we can go ahead and put that caveat in there. But my guess is he's athletic enough to cover on teams. He's a good enough blocker to potentially be your third blocking tight end, because that's not Jared Wiley, at least to this point. Big frame, not a big blocker either in college or what we've seen so far here. So I also, to Tom Pellissero's original tweet I'm looking at here, I don't know that he's, quote, one of Travis Kelce's understudies either. I think this is a move that probably has playing time incentives on the conditional 7th rounder, and you get compensatory stuff by then. It's another entire, it's not even this upcoming draft. It's 2026, as you said. So I think this is Blake Bell plus Chris Lamons, like that kind of player. Clint says maybe this is Tobe's consolation prize for not getting Nico. I do kind of think that's what it is. Maybe he makes them a little more interesting, a little more multiple on offense, being able to have a blocking first type of tight end. I as from what I have gleaned, but it really seems like it's sort of a depth and special teams move, especially if you need to limit Kelce at any point, and you gotta put Noah Gray in some tight end 1 positions. Maybe he can step in as tight end 2 in spots you wouldn't want to put Wiley in right now. Wiley didn't do anything in the preseason that made him stand out, so I don't think that's great news. I have backed off that bandwagon a smidge, but this doesn't really accentuate that too much for me.
Yeah, again, it's fine. Just confusing, but fine.
For me, it's surprising more than confusing.
Thank
I
you.
understand it, but it's like, oh, I understand it, but I did not expect it.
It's almost like Juju. It's similar to Juju. But what's nice as we're sitting here talking about tight end 4, wide receiver 5, we're not sitting here talking about, oh my gosh, who's the quarterback, who's the wide receiver, what is happening to this team, who's the edge rusher. The Chiefs are in a great spot. Carson Steele. Carson Steele, RB2. Looks like Clyde's making the roster. Looks like Deneric Prince was released, waived. I would imagine practice squad for Deneric. That's going to be the goal. I would be shocked, I think, if a team picked him up.
Me too.
I wouldn't get it.
Frank Gore Jr. is on waiver wires. I think Deneric Prince is probably pretty low on the running back depth chart for most people.
Yes. Samaje Perine, for example, a really good third down back.
Have they waived him yet, or are they still trying to shop him?
That's back and forth.
Yes. I saw Samaje Perine on my timeline, and I called Brett Veach. I said, listen, man, I just want you to know that this is happening. He said, how did you get this number? And then he hung up.
That's crickets, baby.
Carson Steele!
Carson Steele. He earned this. And now I know some people are going to sit here and talk about, well, there was really no one behind Isaiah Pacheco, so someone had to win it. My thought was he was behind Amani Bailey as a UDFA. He was behind a guy who hadn't played football ever, and Louis Rees-Zammit. And he was slowly worked his way up. And then it was like, okay, well, can he beat out Amani Bailey as a UDFA guy? Yeah, he did. Can he beat out a Deneric Prince? Yeah, he did. Well, can he beat out a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a veteran? Yeah, he did. And the Chiefs tried to put him in uncomfortable situations to see how he would respond, and he did a great job. Whether it was kickoff, special teams, pass protection, catching the ball, running the ball, they tried to do a little bit of everything to see, hey, what can we throw at him? What is maybe a little too over his head as a undrafted running back who maybe doesn't have a great spot, whether it's fullback or running back in the NFL? He aced every single test. And he's a running back, by the way. He's a damn running back and a damn good one. As Slothy said, he stole a grown man's job. I'm all in on Carson Steele.
Yeah, I think technically he earned his roster spot today. Realistically, he earned it by halftime against the Lions. Because that really was the moment for me when he was in there for basically a long drive drill like they do at training camp. He was in there for a real live action long drive drill with Mahomes at quarterback. They tested him in virtually every way you can test a running back. Run the ball, run a route, pass protect, run a little play action. And then special teams, we saw it again and again. I think in the preseason finale against the Bears, it was a little bit of like, hey, go out there and just show us one more time it wasn't a fluke. Somebody's got to get these touches, put a little more on tape, and he did it again. I would say that I'm not sure this was good process by the Chiefs, but Carson Steele is absolutely a good result. As we talked about at the time, as we talked about throughout much of the preseason, you're right to note that the running back room was one guy and a bunch of hope. And that hope on Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not paying off. That hope on Deneric Prince or any of the other names you've mentioned and other ones that have come and gone already, none of that hope paid off. Carson Steele made the Chiefs right. I think he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. And I still kind of think the Chiefs probably should have had another option in the mix, and maybe this is the time to do it, where I've kind of tongue-in-cheek have noted, like, this team doesn't even have their Ronald Jones. You know, they don't even have Carlos Hyde. Where's the, like, vet journeyman type of guy that can give you a little bit of consistency, but probably not a lot of pop? Maybe it is Samaje Perine, or maybe it's calling back Jerick McKinnon, although I don't think that's super likely. All of that to say, Carson Steele ended up being, I think correctly, one of the two probably biggest stories out of camp in the preseason for this team, and I'm not sure he's not one.
I think Keontae Ingram probably could do some of that veteran running back role.
He was my pre-camp running back 3 with that in mind. The vet that can do a little more of all that. And tell you what, man, he might not have been the 6th best running back on this team.
Yeah, not great for him. Not a whole bunch of surprises so far. Again, Hendershot, Juju, those might be the biggest ones. Kelvin Joseph, a little bit of a surprise to me. No
Cam Thomas?
No,
Cam Thomas was interesting.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. Yes, former third rounder, Arizona. I know a lot of Arizona fans were actually bummed.
Samaje Perine has been cut.
Been cut now officially.
I mean, I guess all of these cuts theoretically have happened. We just don't have them all reported. Perine is among them now. Tim Patrick also was actually cut, which I know they talked about doing, but that's sort of confusing.
And Noah Brown. I mean, there's some solid players from the Texans. There's some solid players on the free agent market right now.
Michael Burton is available.
No.
Put him back there with Carson Steele. You want to show me a light box? Bleep your light box. Here's Michael Burton and Carson Steele. That power.
But yes, Cam Thomas from Arizona, 3rd round draft pick. Arizona, a lot of the fans were talking and they were bummed. They were like, he's the only guy that got pressure in the preseason. Why are we letting him go? And to me, the thought process was he was listed as a linebacker with the Cardinals in that 3-4 defense.
Yeah.
He's a 4-3 edge. So he actually fits Kansas City a lot better. He does not fit what Arizona is trying to do with the new regime, how they're trying to revamp everything. Cam Thomas just wasn't a schematic fit. He's going to be a schematic fit in Kansas City. They liken him to a Mike Dana. The Chiefs aren't getting this super high upside, crazy talented, but maybe has no floor. They're not getting a Tano Passanio or a Joshua Kando. They're getting more of a Mike Dana.
I hope everybody who knows what your voice sounds like has an appropriate context for how we feel about Mike Dana.
Yeah, I love Mike Dana.
I know. I'm just saying, I hope that people know where this is going.
Yes, because, okay, if you don't know me, I love the Mike Danas. I love these floor guys. That's why I love Karlaftis and why I always go, why does everyone want Boye Mafe? Why do people want these high upside edge rush?
Karlaftis' ceiling has been the payoff here, which has surprised all of us a little bit.
But the floor was obviously there from the get-go.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could have a boat.
You said Boye Mafe when FAU is right there, dude.
Oh. Damn, K-State, I'm sorry.
I know, man. I feel bad. I like Felix seems like a great dude. I'm just telling you what my eyes are saying.
But I like these guys who are like, we have a boat right here. Mm-hmm. We got a boat. Yeah, I've always wanted a boat. But there's a box over here. It could even be a boat in the box. I'll take the box. Take the damn boat. It might not be a yacht, but you got the boat. You can go out there, you can fish, you can do some shrimping, you can go some skiing, you can do what you want out there. Okay? Take the boat. And the Chiefs brought in a John boat. They brought in a useful boat. It's not a yacht. It's not some major pontoon, but you can get on the water. Cam Thomas can get on the water, he can get on the field, and he can play some snaps. That's what the Chiefs needed. And also, Brisco, what's to say to you about FAU?
It's not great, Sterling. Back to you. I will put just a little sprinkle of analytical, new look, football, weirdo little flavoring on top of the things you've said that I believe are still true and valuable. I will especially be happy with the floor guy at a cost like this one. A future 7th for a guy who might be your 4th best edge right now, which I think is very much in the picture, right? Maybe he'd be 3rd right now if Amenahu's out still, which he is. He'll start on PUP. That is where the value comes back. If you draft that guy in the 3rd round and he never really finds that groove for you, it's not great. If you draft that guy, in a lot of ways, Breeland Speaks was supposed to be a floor guy, right? It's like, well, he's kind of out of position and kind of a tweener, but he was the last guy at the end of that run, and so we traded up for him and all of that. The Karlaftis concern, and I was lukewarm probably on Karlaftis throughout that process and trying to figure out what he looked like as a pro, because I don't want to spend a 1st round pick on a guy that you think you can put a cap on. Obviously, Karlaftis has far exceeded what I think he has already exceeded what most people thought his ceiling was, and that's tremendous. He's a great player, and frankly, for the long-term benefit of the Chiefs, if he doesn't get any better from here, that might be the best thing for keeping the crew around, because at some point he gets too expensive. Really good player. The thing with Thomas that just makes sense to me is that right now you literally have the Mike Dana of this situation, and you have George Karlaftis, who's like Mike Dana on steroids. Not a reason to check his to make a pee in a cup league. It's purely a metaphor. And you have Charles Omenihu, who is also, I think, a relatively high floor guy who also has a high ceiling. He's just missed a lot of time, and injury here is obviously unfortunate. Beyond that, it's like, oh, well, Malik Herring can set an edge. Truman Jones can set an edge. FAU has some burst moments where he can kind of get after the quarterback, but he cannot set an edge. I like the boat metaphor in this specific conversation even more because you said it can get you in the water. I don't know that you can go into the water with FAU right now. I don't know that your edge is gonna float if Felix's mystery box is the thing you're taking into the lake. I think in the grand scheme of things, Felix probably ends up having a little more time to develop, a little more time to put things together. Defensive end can be a developmental slot in a way that, like, if he just was the sixth end on this team for a while, or I guess hopefully fifth, and you're trying to figure it out, I could see him sticking around throughout most of his rookie deal on that, and then you hope you see one of those jumps. But you're trying to three-peat right now, and trying to three-peat when you have a massive question about who your third defensive end is throughout the first half of the season, perhaps, this was a legitimate issue, and I think the Chiefs made a responsible move to kind of solidify that group a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. A responsible move to solidify it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is great for FAU. I don't know how independent this is, even if FAU was looking solid. Would they still say, hey, we still need more depth there, at least for now? We're not going to have a huge investment, but we will make an investment.
It really was. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like it really was. It's Malik Herring or Truman Jones. Like that's after Felix, and Felix hasn't shown you anything. So yeah, I think if Felix could have had a good preseason, this still may have happened. But we didn't live in that world, and we saw Felix play a lot and not make a tremendous impact.
Yeah, and I also wonder what this means. Somehow everything had to be in by 3:00, and the Chiefs are still sitting here like, hey, we're going to make you wait.
Yeah.
Makes great podcast work. Yay, guys. Thanks,
Thankfully,
Chiefs.
enough of it leaked out earlier, but yeah, it would have been bad.
Yeah, and also thank you, Kansas City Chiefs, for saying you're going to have the interviews today at 11:15. It didn't start until like 11:50.
And there's there's like a 10-minute gap, I think, between Nick Bolton, who talks like a sped up podcast, and Juju, who was kind of sleepy like 15 minutes later.
And it was great when you do live radio and you can't really take a break because you have to stay and air it live and you have to vamp, and all of a sudden you get stuck on talking about the movie Rudy for a long ass time. And the next thing you know, the next segment after they end, the actual Rudy calls into the show, and we talk to Rudy, the guy who's the movie's made after, the guy who made the movie too, for like 20 minutes. It was the most random thing that happened. Yeah, it was great. We talked to Rudy today.
How did you... What?
Les Norman hooked it up.
Okay. I was going to ask how you verified it, and I trust Les with my life, I think, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I do trust Les in my life. So, yeah, we talked to the Rudy from Notre Dame today. Like,
is he more interesting than Nick Bolton or Juju Smith-Schuster?
I like both those guys. I
do
like
too.
Juju.
I do
like
too.
Nick.
It was not their best presser performances today. We can be honest about that. Sometimes you have a bad game, and sometimes you have a low energy presser. And Juju kind of came back with a low energy presser. Bummed me out because I think he's great.
Nick Bolton, I was wondering if he's making a TikTok, and that's why he made us wait. I was wondering if Juju was making a TikTok, and he's back in the media now. He had to, get some stuff done.
Probably.
Not fun, though. When it comes to Nick Bolton, he's going to play the first little bit of the season with a brace on. He talked about it, how, do you like sitting on the sideline at least so you can learn and kind of get a feel for everything? And he's basically like, I did that last year. In the preseason, he was talking about how he couldn't play. He's like, you could almost hear the frustration a little bit for a guy who's very physical, but he was at least appreciative of the fact, he goes, man, I've had, 21 years of great health. You're going to have injuries in the NFL. It's part of the game. He talked about his contract by not talking about his contract. Obviously, in regards to the news of Creed Humphrey getting his extension, which was massive.
A lot has happened in the last week.
18 mil a year for 4 more years. 4 more years of Creed Humphrey. But you're right. We didn't learn a lot from Bolton. Didn't glean a ton from Juju. But still, Bolton's ready to go week 1, and the Chiefs will need him, brace or not. He said he won't be limited by the brace, but you're playing the Ravens with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry and the Ravens, first game of the season, very physical team. That's a game that Bolton needs to play well in, and quite frankly, Leo Chenal, you'd imagine a heavy dose of him.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Leo a ton this offseason. I mean, we did sort of as like, here's a guy who's going to step up. I guess I should say this preseason. There were a couple of pass coverage reps from Leo that I caught and then went, oh, I hope that's not how this goes all year. And he is a guy that we need to talk more about a week from now when we're approaching a football game and actually, kind of assessing where the questions in this defense may be. At linebacker, it looks like Cam Jones is expected to make the roster. Another guy that has some special teams range, but it is 3:50 p.m. Central Time, and the Chiefs are just letting us figure it out on vibes right now.
Yeah, by the way, I think we all expected Cam Jones to make the roster. I expected him to. He looked great in the final game of the season, which, again, small sample size, but he looked good all throughout training camp, OTAs. The Chiefs like him. I'm assuming that means Jack Conklin also on the team, Curtis Jacobs. What happened to Curtis? Was there an IR stint or an injury designation at one point for Curtis? I cannot remember.
Nothing
now. Official,
at least. I would also assume that Cochran is the other is 4-5 with Jones. They could keep 6. That's that little math that we've kind of played around with. I guess also we can say that it's a little bit interesting that it's 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 now 4 tight ends again. Probably leaving the option open for 10 offensive linemen, but that could go either way. These are the things that I thought the
wild card. CJ
probably,
Hansen or even Ethan Driscoll as the wild card.
Yeah, those are the 2. The other thing though that is like kind of silly throughout all of this is, so when it's all said and done, this 90-man roster that 91-man roster really that we've been talking about the cutdowns from is going to be a 70-man roster. Maybe this is my little PSA I can give as this unfurls here. There is a 17-player cap on the practice squad, provided that one of those guys is the international pathway program. Is that right? You playing music? That's exciting.
It's your PSA. You always play
it's
music
a little
under
too.
PSAs.
It's a little too. Oh, go ahead. Turn it up. Turn me up. I need a little more on my headphones too. Hey kids, let's learn a little bit about the NFL's practice squad. While only 53 players can be on the team's active roster over the course of a season, do you know what the practice squad is for? Teams can keep up to 17 players on their practice squad if one of those players is from the International Pathway Program. That's the case for Nigerian offensive tackle Chu Godric. He will likely be the Chiefs' 17th practice squad player. That would not go to Louis Rees-Zammit, who would have to take up one of the other 16 remaining spots. Did you know that practice squads can include up to 6 players with unlimited accrued seasons, up to 4 players with no more than 2 accrued seasons, and then the remaining spots, in addition to the IPP player slot, must go to players with 0 to 8 games of regular season experience. So Sterling, when it's all said and done, there will be 70 players who fill the halls at One Arrowhead Drive. 17 of them will just be on the practice squad. Thank you. Thank you. No, please.
That was pretty fun, actually. I enjoy having this little thing now. That's fun. I feel
if you
fancy.
Need me to do a PSA, let me know, and I'll try.
Yeah, that's a PSA music for you.
Bounce in one. I like that.
It's a good call. Clint, the PSA kind of turned porno. Oh man, Clint.
Hit the music, Sterling.
Oh yeah, just a little bit. That's a little bit. No, we're not doing that. We're not.
Hey, everybody. Let me tell you about my practice squad. Is that anything?
No. All right, a couple more comments I want to get to right here. Jeremiah says Christian Roland Wallace making it is a bit of a surprise. We talked about it a little earlier on. We had some feelers out. Myself, Harms, Matt, Derek. We kind of all actually expected Christian Roland Wallace to make it. Again, that was more of our wild card pick, but that was just the way things were trending, what we were hearing.
Might come at the expense of a corner. It won't come at the expense of fifth. He'll be the fifth safety. The top four is pretty set in stone. Deion Bush feels like a practice squad lock at this point.
Yeah. And then Keith Taylor's the other unknown right now.
Yeah, we don't know about him yet. He could go either way.
Steven says, got to remember Felix is still young than most in his draft class. I'm with you.
He's like the fifth youngest guy on the roster now, or like he's in that range. That is true. I think they'll give him time to develop. It's just this preseason would have been a great time to see a little more progress. Unfortunately,
yeah.
But that is
again, I've talked multiple times how I've said he's young. I said last year was a red shirt. I'm almost just glossing over whatever happened last year, but I do want to at least see. If he does not make any sort of impact, I'm not asking for a lot.
Right.
But if he makes zero impact by the time Charles Omenihu comes back, I'm very disappointed. It's one of those situations where I'm not asking for him to be a complete player. I'm not asking him to have 6 sacks when Charles gets back. But can he do something good? Can he do anything good? If he's not good against the run, can he get after the quarterback on obvious pass rush situations? I'm just asking for him to show some growth in a specific part of the game. That's all I'm asking for. That feels very, very reasonable. I don't care, first rounder, second rounder. I don't give a hoot. I'm a reasonable man here. Show me something.
And when you have like B.J. Thompson, obviously he's on the NFI list. Although the report today is there's optimism he might play this year, which is great considering he almost died a couple of months ago. That's B.J. Thompson, and I think this goes back to the trade and why I do think that matters and why it very, very much does reflect on Felix. B.J. Thompson was kind of like the lanky, not a super obvious scheme fit who you could bulk up and kind of red shirt, and then maybe in his second year he kind of pink shirt, so I don't know if that's half of a red shirt. And you can have that one of those bottom roster spots in your defensive line be your developmental guy. I think what we see from the Chiefs deciding they needed to make a move, a small move, but still a move to bolster their defensive end group, is that they're kind of looking now and going, oh, well, we've probably got more of those developmental projects than we do guys that we're comfortable with having on the field right now. And you at least wanted Felix to be a guy who you could see on the field and not immediately think that the opposing offense is about to audible and do a run right at him. And that's kind of what it felt like in the preseason.
Great question from Lauren Shanks here.
Is it where's the roster?
No, that's from Brantz. That's a great one. Brantz, always appreciate you, Brantz.
That's also from me. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, where's the roster? That's a very good one. It's very frustrating, Kansas City. You've made me wait a lot already with your press conferences, and now you're doing this. It's a big booty bummer. All right. Lauren says, in retrospect, was the KT midseason trade worth it? I still say yes. I get third rounder. I get the headache. I get the miscues last year, and obviously the off the field situations. It's almost like, I don't want to say Frank Clark, because Frank Clark did so much in the postseason that you have rings to show for, but that one play, the one return, if that return didn't happen, it's an F. It's an F. But the one play did happen. The one play, it's almost like Christian Cologne for the Royals. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, that's a horrible draft pick. Horrible. But he had some of the most memorable hits in Royals postseason history. Right? He had some huge plays. Was it worth it overall? No. You'll take Mike Trout. But like, you can't say it was a complete failure because he showed up. Like, I don't know what you grade it, but I almost say yes, because I don't know who else is making that return. It's such a small thing. It's one play. I understand. I'm basically viewing his entire third-round draft pick on one play. But I know what happened. I know it's hindsight, but I know what happened. And that one play helped the Chiefs win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I guess. Could you do the same thing for Sky Moore? It's the part of this. I don't dislike the question at all, but I dislike the way we try to manifest a real answer to an impossible question. Again, it's kind of a fun question for exactly this format, but I find myself eventually running into a dead end of, well, look, no, I mean, you wouldn't make that trade again. You would spend that third round pick on a player who maybe would have helped some of the growing pains during last season's wide receiver struggles, or you would have just used it on a rookie that you hope adds to your depth. And we've seen third round picks turn into meaningful players on this team. Maybe you're talking about a third round corner who climbs the ladder instead of where we're at right now, shaking up the rest of the cornerback room, whatever. I don't think that you can say that it was a good trade. I don't think that you can say that you would undo it, because undoing anything that led to back-to-back Super Bowls is also kind of an insane thing, even for me, who's usually willing to engage those hypotheticals to an incredible degree. I think that the Chiefs had a decent process. I understand why Tony was the guy they targeted. I think the process was fine. I think the results were horrendous with one exception, and I don't think that makes it a good trade. But I also have no interest in being like, no, guys, just forget that punt return happened. It is the saving grace of an argument for an argument that would otherwise be completely unwinnable.
I know you have to leave at some point soon, Brisco. I'll stop you for 2 more minutes here if you don't mind. Cool. Or if you have to leave. But
no, I can do 2 more minutes.
Are there any chance of a Brett Veach special at cornerback? Obviously, we know Christian Roland Wallace making the roster, the initial 53. That's according to Matt Derrick. But guys like C.J. Henderson, former 9th overall draft pick released. Farley, who's been a lot of injuries, but he was drafted in the first round, I think 22nd overall a few years ago by the Titans. Any chance we see one of those Brett Veach specials like we have seen with former first-round cornerbacks that he loves to go after?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's easier on defense because you're not trying to bring a guy in to be able to summarize Andy Reid's entire playbook before week 1 arrives. I would lean towards saying that there'll probably be somebody defensively. The defensive line would have made a lot of sense. We've seen now kind of essentially an edge addition. And then the defensive backfield, I think safety's probably set. But yeah, I mean, if they essentially swap out Kelvin Joseph in favor of one of those other guys that's in a very similar spot, absolutely, that feels like an addition that they would be happy to make.
Yeah. All right, Brisco, I will let you go because I know you have other obligations that you have to get to.
I thought for sure I'd be writing for the next half hour before starting another podcast in 30 minutes, but maybe just more podcasting.
Yeah, apparently that might just be live for you. I'll try and hang on with everyone for another 5 or so minutes just to see if we see anything from the Chiefs. Brisco, I appreciate it. I will see you next Tuesday.
I'm looking forward to it. We'll be ever closer to real football, and I believe sources say that the Chiefs 53-man roster will be set by next Tuesday's show. So we can talk about it more then.
Wow, that's a lock. All right, Brisco, appreciate it, man. All right, I'm going to hang around for just a little more with you guys, just in case the 53-man roster breaks down anytime soon. Richard, make sure if you need me off, let me know in the chat because I just basically assumed we can keep doing this. Casey says, I don't think you changed anything because changing anything could mean losing Super Bowls, but it is a sunk cost today. That's my thought process, Casey, is you don't change anything because you know you have the Super Bowl because of that trade. But doesn't mean you have to keep the guy because you traded for him. I always love when people bring up the sunk cost. Sunk cost is like the one thing that stayed with me when it came to economics, okay? I'm so glad other people love sunk cost as well. Alan F says, Lewis Cine was the first rounder that was just released from Minnesota. Let me check in on Lewis. I liked him coming out of college. Actually, same thing as C.J. Henderson. I was a huge fan of his. Again, sometimes we get things wrong, just like that. Lewis Cine was 2 years, played in 22 and 23. He's played 10 games overall for Minnesota. surprising. He was a stud coming out of Georgia. Really, really good player. That is a big surprise. That's a very, when he was drafted, he was supposed to be a game-changing safety for Minnesota. Did not happen. Let me see. A couple more here. Brant's asked if I'm going to the home opener. Not planning on it. I might go for media, just for work stuff if I have to go cover the game. But as of now, Brands, I am not going. I try to go to at least one game or two games as a fan, which is always fun because you get to actually have fun and booze a lot when you go as a fan versus when you have to actually go and be responsible. Jeremiah says Lewis got a gruesome injury. His rookie season was never the same. Appreciate that. I couldn't remember what happened because I know he was an absolute stud coming out of college. Joshua Clayton, Swayze Bozeman gone. Yeah, I was not surprised by Swayze Bozeman. Would I have liked to see Swayze make the roster? Yeah, I love the name. I like some of the potential, but I don't think he was ever that close to making it. I think guys like Cole Christensen, Curtis Jacobs, in my opinion, would have been ahead of him. Let me see. Any news? It's so hard. Thank you, Chiefs, for just making this way harder than it needs to be. Appreciate you guys. Just so sweet. Slothy says I vote you go to the Chargers game at Sterling. I'll go. You fly me out, I'll go. I'll go to the Chargers game if you fly me out, Slothy. How about that? That fair? You already donated $10, so should cover it, right? I can't imagine a ticket to a Chargers game's any more than 5. It's not like they have fans anyways. Lloyd Hayes says, unbelievable they cut Rice, but keep Sky Moore. They didn't cut Rice. Maybe you mean Ross. If you mean Ross, that move to me was more 1-for-1 with Juju Smith-Schuster. Rice is still here. Sky Moore made it basically because of, I think now, special teams. Almost Sky Moore made it over Nico Remigio if you want to view it in that regard. Ross isn't playing special teams. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't playing special teams. That wide receiver 7 spot realistically is where Ross would have slid in. That's where Sky Moore is. That's special teams only. Again, Justin Ross played in 10 games last year, had 11 targets. He's not really playing on special teams. Sky Moore looked good in the return game, looking a lot like it could be Sky Moore and Carson Steele back there for kickoffs. Sky Moore made it for special teams. That's why Ross was on the outside looking in. Have to imagine you'll see Ross on the practice squad. And again, I wouldn't even be surprised if you saw Ross in a game at some point this season for Kansas City. Slothy, I get Chargers game in KC. Okay. I thought you meant me going to the Chargers game in LA. I thought you were going to fly me out, Sloth. I am in KC. You know I live in KC. You'll see me at KC Beer Co. sometimes. It's where I peruse and hang out. LRZ on the practice squad says Joshua Clayton. Yeah, I can't imagine anyone picking up LRZ. He was obviously not going to make the 53. Just not a surprise. A guy who does not play football, try to, valiant effort, love the potential, but he wasn't ready for a team that's going for a three-peat. Just, he's not moving the needle. He's a guy that makes more sense on the Carolina Panthers, a team that's rebuilding, a team that can afford to go through during the regular season the ups and downs of a very athletic, very talented guy who's, quite frankly, learning the sport. LRZ needs some seasoning, and he'll get it on the practice squad. So as long as no one picks him up, again, not a surprise, he'll be there for the entirety of the season. You don't want to put him on a injury designation either, because that means he could not practice. So there was a little bit of a back and forth there, but looks like LRZ most likely will make it through to the practice squad. Jeremiah says still missing like 18 names that were cut at this point. Speed it up. It's 11 p.m. over here. Hey, I'm trying. You tell the Chiefs to speed it up. Okay? It's not on me. Tell the Chiefs to speed it up. I'm doing what I can on my end of the actual names. I can go through the names. Nico Remigio, Generic Prince, Swayze Bozeman, LRZ, Irv Smith, Justin Ross, Kadarius Toney, Miles Battle, Randon Plattner, Echo Boydo, Nick Torres, Jaquarius Spivey, Alec Gubner, Owen Carney, Phillip Brooks, Griffin McDowell, Kelvin Joseph, Kyle Sheets, Ian Book, Jaron Hayek, Randon Plattner. I think I accidentally said him twice, and McCade Mature, who was obviously injured. Those are the official names so far of the roster cuts, but still looking for the others. B.E. Gant says Ethan Driscoll make the 53. Honestly, I'm between him and C.J. Hansen. I'm between him and C.J. Hansen on who makes the 53 as my 10th offensive lineman. I think both have a chance. I think basically it comes down to who do you not think is getting picked up? Who do you think might not make it through to the practice squad? Is that Driscoll, the tackle? Is that C.J. Hansen, who you spent a 7th rounder on? I've gone back and forth there. I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I think both have the potential of being picked up by another team. I think the Chiefs would most likely like to have both actually on the practice squad. It just comes down to, can they get through? Joshua Clayton says, I'm glad they added more edge depth. That's in regards to Cam Thomas. I am glad as well. Lauren says, Chiefs Twitter will update roster cuts 15 minutes after this podcast. You bet your ass. That's how the Chiefs operate. The second you get done with something, it happens. In radio, we got to air the broadcast, right? We got to air the, Juju and Nick Bolton talking today. They were 40 minutes late. The second you go to break, what happens? Oh, looks like here comes Nick Bolton. They know, baby. They know. Second, I end this podcast. That's why I'm trying to keep going right now for you guys. I'm trying to keep everyone updated as much as possible. But the Chiefs are making it difficult. All right. Any other questions you want me to hit on? Any other questions anyone wants me to hit on? Drop it in the chat. I'll go another 4 or so minutes. We'll go till 4:15 Central Time. We'll go till 4:15. If it's not out by 4:15, I'm just going to kick rocks, be mad, and quite frankly, be disappointed that it has not come out yet. We were told 3 o'clock. We were told an hour 15 ago. So you can blame the Chiefs. Don't blame me. I'm doing what I can. Clint says, why do the Raiders suck? Why is the sky blue? Just is what it is, baby. It is what it is. Chiefs Girl says, new long snapper and holder a problem for Butker. Good question. The long snapper will be back. James Winchester. He'll be fine. I'm not worried about that. As far as holding Ariza, we haven't seen it so far. We haven't seen any issues with the holding. Maybe I'm being a little naive here, but I think they'll be okay. Again, it wasn't an issue for Tommy Townsend at first. It was almost his 2nd or 3rd year in the NFL when the holding issues arose. I don't think it's going to be an issue for Ariza. I think Butker, Dave Tobe, and obviously James Winchester, so damn good as a long snapper. They work on that so much at practice. They work on that long snapping, holding, getting the ball down. I mean, it's ingrained in them at this point. If it was happening in the middle of the season, then yes, I think I would have more of a concern. But the fact they've had all offseason to work on this makes me less concerned. But that's a very, very good question there. Let me see. Will the Chiefs try and grab a release running back? Who do you think? Jamie Powers. I really think the only guy I'm looking at is Samaje Perine. As of now, it almost feels like Clyde is the veteran. You know how the Chiefs typically like to have, well, obviously Isaiah Pacheco. They'll have Carson Steele, the young guy. And then they'll have Deneric or Keontae or a plethora of guys on the practice squad. Who's going to be the active third running back? A lot of times it's a veteran. It's been Jerick McKinnon. It's been, I guess not really, but Melvin Gordon at one point. It's been LaShawn McCoy. I guess that's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I guess Clyde's probably looking like the veteran running back at this point. Obviously, you're hoping that multiple running backs don't get injured in a singular game. But if one were to get injured, knock on wood, you have opportunities to make a move later on with whoever is on your practice squad by the time the next game rolls around. They will not have 4 running backs active on game day. That's just not how the Chiefs will operate. So you're probably looking at Clyde, Carson, and Pacheco as the 3. The only guy I would say keep an eye out for, Frank Gore Jr., which I don't think he's going to get to Kansas City in the waiver order. And then number 2, Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine has been released by the Broncos. I do think he can make some sense here in Kansas City. He'd be a very nice third down back, physical back as well. I wouldn't mind the Chiefs taking a look at Samaje Perine. But again, they obviously have a very fond of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that's what we think. From Jose Luis Gutierrez says Juwan Taylor starting game 1. Yes. How are we at both tackle positions? I think that you're going to see Juwan Taylor be much improved this year. I do think there were a case of the yips, a case of the Chuck Knobloch, the Rick Ankiel, the John Lester not being able to throw to first base. I think he got in his head. And how could you not? When you think you've been doing the same thing you've been doing your entire NFL career, then all of a sudden it gets pointed out week 1. I'm not going to blame Chris Collinsworth. I get it. We all noticed it on TV as well. We were all taken aback by it happening. Whether you think Lane Johnson gets away with it or not, obviously they don't call it on him. They were calling it on Juwan. I don't even think it was the quick step. More so, he was not lining up correctly too far back. That's going to get figured out. And I think in totality, he's quick enough, athletic enough. He didn't need that extra half step of lining farther back. He's good enough. I wasn't happy with the contract when he was being brought in by Kansas City, but it doesn't mean I don't think he can be a good, useful player. I think he'll be a good right tackle, probably on the cusp of a top 10 right tackle for Kansas City this season. Kingsley Suamataia has been very solid so far. Again, I don't think he's going to be great this year, but I think he'll be Donovan Smith serviceable this year. Toba Ceratop says no mustache. Yeah, I'm sorry. I shaved last night. Stash is gone. Sorry. Stash is gone. I had a bachelor party I went on in Colombia. What was that, a week or 2 ago? Week and a half ago now. Grew it out for that. Had it until about yesterday again. It just grows quick. I just realized that. I shaved it after the bachelor party. Grew back in a week, and now it's grew back thick and shaved it this morning. Couldn't have any more. Clint says Frank Gore is still alive. No. Frank Gore Jr. Frank Gore is still alive. Yes, his dad is, but he's no longer in the NFL. Frank Gore Jr. is. Phantom said, why did the NFL decide to make all cuts to a single day instead of over a week or 2? It's a great question. It lets you, a team, take a longer look. Lets a team take a longer look at a guy. Lets a team also in the preseason get more guys in there. I don't hate it. I really don't hate that it's now one day. I just don't like that it's not as quick as they say it is going to be. Okay? That's my issue. But I do have no issue with it being one day instead of over 3. Scott says, do you think Steele solves our third and short problems? Long answer, no. And hopefully I know it's not the answer maybe people are wanting to hear. I don't see the Chiefs just turning around under shotgun and handing him the ball. Now, he's different than Deneric Prince, and I think the Chiefs are going to operate different in a regular season game than the preseason. But a lot of times on these third and short situations, they're still running out of shotgun. That does not behoove. That does not help the running back. That does not help trying to pick up inches when you're lined up multiple yards without getting a running start behind the line of scrimmage. So, long answer, no. I think it's more of a play calling situation than a personnel situation. But I think he has a better chance than the Deneric Princes, the Keontae Ingrams, the Clydes of getting hit behind the line of scrimmage and still finding a way to churn forward for a yard, still being able to fall forward. I just still will always wish the Chiefs would run more under center in these short yarded situations than obviously running out of shotgun. Still nothing, and this is still a bummer. All right, I'll vamp for one more conversation here before I'll have to call it, and the Chiefs will have irritated me to no end. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Creed Humphrey has not only gotten the contract extension, but he's changed how he is snapping the football. He was obviously using the spiral snap, but that created some issues last year. As the season progressed, we saw some of those poor snaps, getting the ball back to Mahomes. That luckily Mahomes has a solid baseball background because he was one-hopping the ball back. He was scooping the ball back there. So Creed Humphrey has now overhauled how he snaps the ball from a spiral, and now he's calling what is called a dead man snap. The dead man snap really got popular in 2009, had a little bit of a resurgence in 2017. ESPN did even a deep dive in 2017 on the dead man snap. It was really popular in college, and what it basically does is it takes away a lot of variance in regards to how the ball is snapped. It takes away a lot of the poor snaps, but some of the drawbacks might take a little longer to get back to the quarterback, especially since the Chiefs run out of shotgun so often. With Mahomes being back, not under center, you're no longer having the quick spiral getting back. It's more of a floater going back to Patrick Mahomes. Not only that, a lot of times when you do the dead man snap, how you line up with your legs are a little bit different than how you would traditionally do it with a spiral snap. And some of the drawbacks have been said to be, it can take a second. And a second is obviously being hyperbolic. It's milliseconds, but it takes a little longer to get into your pass blocking or run blocking stance when you use the dead ball snap versus a spiral snap. Well, Creed Humphrey is basically the best blocking center in the entire NFL. I'm wondering how much this either A, hurts him getting into a stance. Does this affect him at all when it comes to actual blocking? If so, I say I will take the occasional bad snap. But I do at least appreciate the Chiefs and Creed Humphrey working on something that was clearly an issue as the season was coming to a conclusion. So that's my update in regards to Creed Humphrey and his new style of snapping. And by the way, it wasn't just, $1 more on the Creed Humphrey contract. It was a guard contract, $18 million per year. Basically, Quinn Miners for the Broncos contract is what Creed Humphrey got. It's a nice raise. It's a damn good raise. Looks like I'm potentially talking to Creed Humphrey on Friday. I'll talk more to him about the contract, the dead man snap, a lot more. But I'm supposed to be talking to Creed Humphrey on Friday as a heads up. All right. Still nothing in regards to Kansas City. Looks like Jamar Chase is expected to play in the opener versus the Patriots. Obviously, he was having the contract dispute with Cincinnati, but looks like he is going to play. I will say I have had a whole bunch of very enjoyable interviews. If anyone wants to check them out as they wait for the 53-man roster to officially come out, because the Chiefs are still an hour and 24 minutes late now. I interviewed Fletcher Cox, talked to him about, this is all on Stacking the Box, obviously a subsidiary of Fansided, which is in partnership with Arrowhead Addict. I do a lot of stuff over there. I did Fletcher Cox. I had a great conversation with Torrey Holt, legendary Rams wide receiver, a wide receiver who should be in the Hall of Fame. We actually talk about his Hall of Fame chances and what's next for Torrey. Interviewed actually yesterday, just came out today, RG3. Robert Griffin III had a phenomenal time talking with RG3. We talk about at the very end what's next for RG3 in regards to obviously being let go by ESPN. We talk about his college career if you're a Mizzou fan. We talk about Brady Cook. We talk about Eli Drinkwitz, Chiefs fans. We talk about Kansas City. We talk about Mahomes. He actually came into a game in 2018 when it was Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Lamar went out of the game. RG3 went in, so we had a chance to see Mahomes up close and personal. Just a really fun guy. One of the more enjoyable conversations I've ever had was with RG3 yesterday. So you can find that on Stacking the Box. Really, really enjoyable if you want to check that out. Interviewed Kelvin Beachum from the Arizona Cardinals. That will be released shortly as well. Upcoming this week, we'll be talking with Derrick Henry. Again, potentially Creed Humphrey. So check out Stacking the Box. Always appreciate it if you guys would like, give us a review. Trying to grow that. Again, we're getting some great guests over there. Means a lot if you can help grow that as well. If you want to like and give us a review on here, I would appreciate it. Always means a lot to us. Again, I'm sorry. I wish I could help you more. I wish I could stay longer, but it's been an hour and a half and still nothing in regards to the 53 being official from Kansas City. Doing what I can. Final one from Phantom said, thoughts on CeeDee Lamb's contract. A lot of money. Ton of money to CeeDee Lamb. Second highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Second highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. I don't know why Jerry Jones does the same thing every single time. If Jerry was smart, he would eventually pay the guy a year earlier, but he always waits to the last year, waits to the last minute, and then pays top dollar. I don't understand Jerry Jones' method, because he seemingly always pays the top of the line guy. He seemingly always takes care and pays his building block guys. But he always pays them top dollar after he says, we'll see, I'm in no hurry, we will wait. Well, when you wait, Jerry, you astute businessman, you're now paying top dollar. I don't get it. Way more successful than I'll ever be. Jerry talks about glory holes way more than I will ever talk about them. If you don't get that reference, go look up Jerry Jones talking about glory holes. Talks about it all the damn time. I don't understand his football building roster construction method. Ever since the good old days, hasn't resulted in a lot of rings. I'm going to check one more time. Checking one more time in regards. But I know the second I get off this, it's going to drop with the 53-man roster, and I'm going to be mad, but that's all I can do. I appreciate everyone listening right now. We'll talk more about the 53. I'll be back on tomorrow with Adam Best. Dang it, Chiefs. I love you so much, but why do you make us wait? Until tomorrow, we are out.